It is late winter in the year 1185, and the Genji general Yoshitsune is leading a group of just 5 boats through a raging storm. Yoshitsune has been given an imperial command from the retired emperor himself, an order to seek out and destroy the Heike, the powerful samurai clan that has taken charge of the infant emperor, a boy named Antoku. And so Yoshitsune has vowed to pursue the Heike by land as far as the horse can go, and by sea to the furthest range of the oar, to bring back the boy emperor and retrieve the 3 priceless imperial treasures that the Heike have stolen. Unfortunately, just as they were about to make the crossing to the other side of Japan's inland sea, the Genji were hit by a violent storm. With a gale now blowing directly behind them, the majority of Yoshitsune's warriors, many of whom have never fought a naval battle in their life, have sided with Yoshitsune's lieutenant, Kajiwara, a cautious man who has advised a pause in the attack until the storm has subsided. Yoshitsune, however, sees opportunity instead of risk, and has implored his men to trust him. "Would you rather cross against the wind?" he taunts them. "No, you'd be mad. But no, tonight the wind is behind us. Perhaps it's a little strong, but this is a chance too good to miss. Good weather keeps an enemy watchful, but howling winds and foaming waves make them believe they are safe. And that is when an attack hits hardest." Despite his efforts though, Yoshitsune is only able to convince 100 or so men to make the crossing with him that night, and so just 5 boats have set out into the storm, loaded with provisions, horses, and Yoshitsune's most loyal attendants, including his faithful bodyguard, the huge warrior monk Benkei, and one of his oldest friends, a courageous warrior named Suginobu. Yoshitsune knows, however, that a direct attack from the sea against the Heike stronghold at Yashima would be futile. With the Heike's superiority at sea, his small band of Genji boatsmen will soon be wiped out, and so he has decided on another plan. Instead of a frontal attack, he will approach the Heike, just as he did at the beach at Ichinotani, from behind. But in order to do that, he will need to land on the far eastern end of the island known as Shikoku, and there he will advance on foot to the rear of the Heike camp. With a gale-force wind driving them forward, a sea crossing that would otherwise have taken 3 days or so takes them just 6 hours, and at daybreak the following day, at the hour of the hare, Yoshitsune's small band of warriors approach the coast of Awa province. Yoshitsune is wary that they may face a less than warm welcome from the local inhabitants, so he prepares for a beach landing assault. As the boats near the coast, he orders his men to offload their horses onto the sea. The horses swim beside the boats until they can stand on the seabed, and at that moment, Yoshitsune's men throw themselves into their saddles and urge their mounts onto the beach. In the end, Yoshitsune's men find only light resistance and are soon able to establish a beachhead. They also find a local supporter of the Genji, a man named Kondoroku, who informs them that they have landed on a part of the coastline known as Victory Beach. "Well, that's auspicious at least," says Yoshitsune. From their source, he also learns that part of the Heike force is currently away engaged in a sortie to attack Iyo in the northwest of Shikoku. The Heike have also stationed pockets of men all along the Shikoku coast and on the smaller islands, which means at Yashima itself they have about 1,000 men. 1,000 men against 100, thinks Yoshitsune. We may still be outnumbered, but the timing may still work for us. "How can we approach the Heike?" he asks Kondoroku. "Well, Yashima is an island," he says, "but the waters are shallow. At low tide you can ride out to the island and not even wet your horse's belly." "And how far is Yashima from here?" Yoshitsune asks. "About 2 days' march." "Right," says Yoshitsune, and turns to his men. "We'll head overland and attack Yashima before they even know we're here." Today, the volcanic plateau of Yashima is connected to the city of Takamatsu on Shikoku, Japan's 4th largest island, by a strip of land, but at the time of the Genpei War, it was separated by a narrow strait. However, as the local source informed the Genji, The water was fordable on horse at low tide. Considering that it was only some months ago that Yoshitsune had defeated the Heike in a surprise attack at Ichinotani, the odds of him being able to launch a very similar assault a second time must have seemed slim. Nonetheless, that's what he set out to do, and he hoped to go one better, not only to catch the Heike unawares, but also to capture the infant emperor and the imperial treasures. On the morning of the 22nd of March, 1185, the Heike leaders are biding their time in the stronghold beneath the plateau at Yashima, a fortress that doubles up as a temporary palace to house the boy emperor and leading members of the Heike clan. There they wait for news from the expeditionary force they have sent to deal with opponents in a neighbouring province. But then, suddenly, they hear shouts of panic, and a scout bursts in with an urgent message. "My lords," he cries, "Takamatsu is burning!" The Heike leader, Lord Munemori, rises immediately and says, "This is no accident, not in daytime. Raise the alarm. It must be an enemy attack, and if there are many of them, we cannot allow ourselves to be surrounded." The Heike can now see that the Genji, after setting alight the houses of Takamatsu, are now bearing down on their stronghold. Fearing that, like at Ichinotani, they could be quickly overwhelmed, Munemori orders an immediate evacuation and instructs his sister, the Empress Kenremonin, to escort her son, the infant Emperor Antoku, onto the imperial barge that is moored a short way out to sea. The Heike also send there, for safekeeping, the three imperial treasures: the sword, the heavenly mirror, and the sacred jewel. Munemori himself boards a command boat in the straits and prepares to orchestrate the Heike defense. Meanwhile, the man leading the Genji assault, General Yoshitsune, realizes that if the Heike detect how few men he commands, they will quickly launch a counterstrike. So, he orders his 80 armed horsemen to attack in small groups of 8 to 10 at a time. That way, the Heike can't guess how many men he has in total, and they will assume he has far more than he does. The ruse works, and the Heike pull back, offering only light resistance at first. Yoshitsune's men burst onto the beach before the main gate to the Heike fortress. The tide is out, so the horses ride straight across. Their hooves splash through the waves, creating a wall of mist from which the streaming white banners of the Genji emerge, convincing the Heike that a great host is launching an all-out strike. The Heike now respond with a volley of arrows, but it is too late. One of Yoshitsune's men has managed to smuggle himself through an entrance to the main fortress and lights a fire. Soon the stronghold's wooden walls and roof are aflame. The smoke has hardly risen before much of the building has burned to the ground. From his command boat, the Heike leader, Munemori, looks in horror as he sees his fortress has been breached. He summons his strongest archers and warriors, the lords Noritsune and Moritsugi. "How many men do they have?" he asks. "Well, at present," Noritsune says, "perhaps no more than 70 or 80. "What?" Munemori is crestfallen. "Is that all? We have more than enough to deal with them. Instead of surrounding and killing them all, we fled in panic to our boats and let them burn the Emperor's palace." Noritsune and Moritsugi look at each other, realizing that their commander is right. "What do you command, my lord?" asks Noritsune. "Take the fight to them. We will fight them on land if we have to." The two samurai take a boat back to the beach in front of the burned-out main gate. There they turn and face the advance guard of the Genji. Moritsugi shouts out, "Who commands this Genji force?" On the other side of the strait, the huge warrior monk Benkei strides forward to the water's edge. "Who do you think?" he shouts. "Lord Kuro Yoshitsune, of course, descendant of Emperor Seiwa, younger brother to Yoritomo, Lord of Kamakura." "Oh, yes," Moritsugi retorts. "I've heard of him. The boy who was orphaned when his father got killed during Heiji and was kept as a temple pet at Kurama. Then I heard he served a gold peddler and he carried the man's gear all the way up to Hiraizumi. Is that the same man?" Benkei points his huge Naginata blade and roars, "How dare you insult my lord with that slick tongue of yours? I know who your people are, the ones who could barely save their own skins at Kurikawa Pass and came crying back to the capital. Where was that sharp tongue of yours when my master destroyed your fortress at Ichinotani?" While this exchange of taunts is going on, the Heike's mightiest archer, Noritsune, the only man in the Heike army who can rival Benkei in size and strength, has quietly stepped back and has taken one of the 24 arrows from his quiver. Carefully, he raises his bow and places Yoshitsune in his sights. Just as he is about to release his shot, Yoshitsune's attendants realize what he is planning and quickly gather around their commander to block any arrow. Noritsune, frustrated, shouts out, "Out of the way! Give me a clear shot!" In fury, he releases a series of arrows. None manage to reach his main target, but one does rip through the chest of the warrior Tsuginobu, who crashes from his mount. Tsuginobu is carried to the rear of the Genji position, where Yoshitsune leans over to hear his retainer's last words. "It's all over for me, Lord," croaks Tsuginobu. "I have no regrets, but I am sorry I must die before you rise high in the world. More than anything else, for a warrior such as I, it is the crowning honor of my life that in generations to come people should say of one Sato Tsuginobu that he died to save his lord on the shores of Yashima." With these words, the last of his strength fails, and Yoshitsune sheds bitter tears for his friend. "Is there no priest nearby?" Yoshitsune shouts. "A wounded man has just died." The men manage to find a priest who prays for Tsuginobu's soul. Later, Yoshitsune presents to the priest as a reward the horse that he rode down the ravine at Ichinotani. For the first time since he left Kamakura to lead his brother's army, Yoshitsune has been affected personally, for Tsuginobu was not only a loyal warrior, but also a close friend. Now, Yoshitsune's fight against the Heike is personal and real. It is at this point, as the sun is starting to set, that the most famous moment in the Battle of Yashima occurs. In the last few hours, various bands of warriors have come down from the hills, so Yoshitsune now commands about 300 horsemen. Nevertheless, he realizes he can't press home his advantage. "The sun is low," he remarks. "Too little days left to decide victory or defeat." He is just drawing back his men when, further out to sea, he sees a Heike boat approaching, decorated in bright colors. Some 100 yards from the shore, it turns broadside to the shore. The Genji are wondering what it is doing, and then they see emerge on board a striking young woman of about 20 years, dressed in a beautiful white and green layered gown and a red skirt. She approaches the side of the boat and plants a red fan bearing a sun disk. She then smiles and beckons to the Genji warriors. Yoshitsune, still smarting from the loss of his friend, says, "What does she want?" Benkei grunts, "Well, it appears she wants us to shoot the fan. But I suspect the idea is really to tempt you, my lord, to approach to get a better look at her, and then, once you're in range, they'll have an archer bring you down with an arrow. Anyhow, you should probably have someone shoot the fan." "And who among us is up to that? The target is 100 yards out, constantly moving, and there's a strong wind." "Well," says Benkei, "we have plenty of good archers, but the best is probably Nasu no Yoichi from Shimoza." "Very well, bring him here then." A short youth, no more than 20 years old, is brought forward. He wears green laced armor and carries a quiver of arrows made with eagle feathers. Among them is a humming arrow, fletched with both eagle and hawk and tipped with deer horn. Under his arm he clasps a lacquered rattan bow, and with deep respect he kneels before Yoshitsune, who tells him, "Now, Yoichi, I have a task for you. See that red fan out there? I want you to score a bullseye and show the Heike what we're made of." Yoichi looks out to the boat at sea, and his jaw drops. He turns back to Yoshitsune and bows his head. "But, sir, I am not sure I can hit it, and if I miss, the shame will be ours forever." "Well, then you'd better not miss it," says Yoshitsune. "And no man who has come to the west with me all the way from Kamakura may decline when I give him an order." Yoichi takes a deep breath and says, "I may or may not miss, sire, but I will try, since you wish it." Yoichi withdraws and mounts his horse. He gets a good grip on his bow, pulls on the reins and guides his horse to the edge of the water. The rest of the Genji men watch from a distance. The fan is so far away that Yoichi has to advance his horse 30 or 40 feet out to sea just to get a good look at it. But it still seems 100 yards off. It is now about 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and the light is getting dim, and a strong north wind is blowing. High waves are breaking on the beach, and the drifting Heike boat out to sea is being tossed up and down, the fan fluttering on its pole. Yoichi can sense that there are now men lining the decks of all the other Heike boats, all of them watching to see if a Genji can take up their challenge. With one hand, Yoichi covers his eyes and silently prays. Hail, Hachiman, great Bodhisattva. I beg you, guide my arrow to hit the center of that fan. For should the arrow miss its mark, I shall break my bow and die, never again to face any man. If you wish me to return, let this arrow of mine strike home. Once more he opens his eyes. The wind has dropped just a little, he senses. So he takes out his humming arrow, puts it to the string, pulls back, and lets fly. The arrow shoots straight and true, and on the Heike boat it slices through the fan an inch above the pivot pin, then flies straight on out to sea. The fan shoots up into the air, flutters for a moment or two, and then drops to the water with a splash. For a moment there is stunned silence, and then a cheer erupts from the Genji onlookers. Then, out to sea, the cheering is echoed by the sound of drumming, as the Heike warriors pound the sides of their boats in admiration. Yoshitsune, however, still angry at the loss of his friend Suginobu, is in no mood for reconciliation. He notices that a Heike soldier is now dancing about on the deck where the fan once stood. Yoichi, he calls, shoot that man. Yoichi takes the next arrow from his quiver, puts it to the string, draws back, and sends it thudding into the man's neck. The Heike warrior topples headlong into the sea. Dead silence now falls on the Heike side, and that brief moment of mutual celebration is over. Several Heike warriors, now furious, drive their boats towards the beach, where they are met by the advancing Genji. In the day's dying light, the two sides fall on each other in one final skirmish before nightfall. Yoshitsune leads his mounted samurai, riding the horses belly deep into the water. As the enraged Yoshitsune charges forward, the Heike men in the nearest boats realize this is their chance. They reach out for Yoshitsune's neckpiece with rakes and grappling hooks. Several times they catch hold of him, but with his sword Yoshitsune is able to knock the hooks away. Eventually, the Heike samurai Moritsugi manages to hook the bow that Yoshitsune has stashed under his arm, tears it from his grasp, and as Yoshitsune watches, it sinks into the sea. Yoshitsune fends off the Heike with the sword in his right hand, and with his left hand he uses a whip to try to catch the bow before it disappears forever beneath the waves. "Let it go!" cries Benkei, as he realizes his commander is in danger of either drowning or getting captured. Finally, Yoshitsune's head re-emerges triumphant from the water, and with a laugh he raises his drop bow. After returning to the beach, he turns to Benkei, who is furious. "What are you playing at, sir? How could you possibly trade your life for a bow, whatever its value in coins?" It's not the bow I care about, Benkei, it's my reputation. My uncle, Tamatomo, was a giant of a man, and he had the largest bow in the land. It took 3 men merely to string it. If I had a bow like that, I might have dropped it on purpose, but with their hands on this weak little bow, the Heike would have just laughed. This is the bow he draws, this Yoshitsune, the man who commands the Genji force? How could I allow that to happen, Benkei? They'd never take us seriously. By now, the sun has set, and the two armies retreat to their positions, the Heike on their boats out to sea, and the Genji to a camp they have set up on the Yashima plateau overlooking the smouldering ruins of the Heike palace. The Genji warriors are exhausted as this is the first rest they have had in 3 days. Following their night crossing in the storm, Yoshitsune has urged them to march day and night across the mountains to Yashima so they could launch their attack and catch the Heike by surprise. The following day, the 200 or so boats that had remained behind on Honshu for fear of being destroyed in the storm finally reached the Yashima coast, Kajiwara's boat in the lead. As Kajiwara strides onto the beach, he is informed by Yoshitsune's men that their commander has already defeated the Heike and conquered the island of Shikoku. "Who needs Kajiwara?" the men laugh. "He's like an auto flower that's picked too late for a service." Yoshitsune's lieutenant is suitably humbled, but the resentment he feels towards his seemingly unstoppable and lucky commander continues to fester. What if Yoshitsune had not been so fortunate? What would have happened if the Heike had realized he was leading such a small force, and if they had immediately launched a counterattack rather than retreating to sea? It is one of the great what-ifs in Japan's history, for they probably could have finished off the Genji before nightfall. Today, more than 800 years later, you can still visit the site of the battle that took place that day. You can see the tomb of Tsuginobu, Yoshitsune's friend and companion who took an arrow for his master. There is a memorial at the site where Yoshitsune almost lost his bow, and you can visit a park at a site named Nasu no Yuichi and stand at the very place from which he released his arrow, perhaps the most famous archery shot in Japan's history. The Heike's retreat at the close of battle allowed the Genji to claim victory, and technically it was a win for the Genji, but effectively it was a draw, as the Heike had avoided a decisive defeat this time and lost only a fraction of the men that had died at Ichinotani. The Heike still had control over the Emperor and the Three Imperial Treasures, and from now on they were determined to make any clash with the Genji take place at sea, where they believed they would have the advantage. They are heading back out to the inland sea and are still looking strong, but what they cannot know is that their next encounter will be their last. In the next episode, we approach the closing act of Japan's samurai civil war, the final face-off between the Heike and the Genji, the great sea battle of Dan-no-Ura.